You know, we're hitting about 80 or so, and it hurts. I mean, the rain pelting against you hurts. If you think of what a really severe sandstorm feels like, that's what it feels like. If you imagine what it's like to try to walk in a wind tunnel, the worst wind tunnel you've ever experienced on a normal day, that's what this feels like. Inability to walk or to stand and to just try to not get hurt. Jake?
All right, Ken, please get inside. Thank you so much. Stay safe. We're going to go now to an even more dangerous part of the hurricane right now. CNN's Bill Weir is live for us in Key Largo, Florida. Bill, tell us what you're experiencing right now.
Much of the same, Jake. I mean, the only way I can describe it is if you own a power washer, you know, where you can clean your deck, spring cleaning. Imagine taking it in the face. It is coming down. Look at these torrential sheets of rain, and we're not set up here to be dramatic. We're actually set up here to be safe. I'm under cover. I'm under a solid stone condo. This is sort of a breezeway carport that we've set up. The camera is back as far as we can and still bring you a picture. But the scary part about it is the wind was predictable for the last few hours. It was coming from the Atlantic side. We're on the other side here. We're hunkered in. Biscayne Bay is over there. But now it's getting so squirrely as it's whipping around and coming through and creating a wind tunnel effect here. All the power is out in the Florida Keys. No surprise there. They're super worried about losing a bridge. That's the main concern of the people down here. And you got to understand, they know storms in the Keys. That's part of living here. It's like traffic in LA or heat in Phoenix, right? They have an average of one hurricane every 4 years, but nothing like this. There hasn't been one this strong since Donna, 1960, 57 years ago today. So this is a once in a lifetime kind of event for the people down here. There's the storm surge to worry about, a 5 to 10 foot storm surge over these low-lying coral islands that could be devastating. There is the tie line, again, as we mentioned, the power line that plugs into the mainland that also brings fresh water in. If that goes down, who knows how long recovery will take. One hurricane ended the overseas railroad in 1935, so they're really concerned about infrastructure now here. But as you can see behind me, this is one of the many harbors. This is a boating community. Your boat is your home in many cases. We met some people who decided to stay near their boats and ride it out in stone shelters like this, and to adjust tie lines. But at a certain point, it's up to the fates. It's up to Irma, whether your boat and maybe even your family survives. Jake?
Bill, you're in Key Largo. That's in the upper Florida Keys. You've been spending the last few days in the Keys, all the way down from Key West up there to Key Largo. You've talked to people that refuse to evacuate. Why did they stay? Why are they remaining there?
There's a lot of different, calculations they make. In some cases, it might be institutional knowledge. Somebody's nice welcome sign is just blowing past. In some cases, maybe they evacuated for a storm that missed them and it was too much hassle and they vowed to stay behind because it was too stressful to be away. In some cases, it was fear of getting on the road when there's no guarantee of getting gas. You don't want to run out of gas somewhere in the Everglades and have to sit through something like this in your car. In some cases, it's I want to be there to help as a first responder for my neighbors. I want to check property. There's a lot of different logic. And the sailors I talk to say, hey, we're used to squalls. We ride out thunderstorms on our boats every day. We know how to do it. It's part of doing business. But this is next level. This is different. And I even saw that in the faces of some of the old conks, people who haven't evacuated, 80-year-olds who decided this one is too big and too bad and it's coming this way. But there's something about the culture down here. It's divers and it's under sunken treasure hunters and drifters and partiers who come down here to live in paradise. They're fiercely independent. They don't like to be told what to do. They don't like mandatory anything in life. So they know they're on their own. They know there are no first responders that will answer their call. The hospitals are shut in the Keys. But this will be either one of those sadly tragically romantic stories about captains going down with their boats. I mean, that seems to be the case right now. Or they will be lucky beyond belief if they get through this thing in one piece.
All right, Bill, you're doing an amazing job out there. Please stay safe. We're going to go now to CNN's John Berman. He's live in Miami, where there are wind gusts of 100 miles per hour. John, what are the conditions right now that you're experiencing?
Yeah, the State of the Union is wet, Jake. Very, very wet and very, very windy. The National Weather Service just put out an advisory for downtown Miami. And Miami is a very tall city, a lot of high rises here. And they are saying that there are 100-mile-an-hour wind gusts at these high rises. Stay away from the windows. You are being told right now, if you are on one of the upper levels of these high rises, and you shouldn't be, the rain just coming down now, fiercely coming down right now. 450,000 people without power in Miami-Dade County alone, Jake. That's a very high number, and the worst of the storm is still to come. To put it in perspective, in Hurricane Harvey, which was bad in different ways, it was 300,000 people without power at its height. Miami-Dade County, one county already more than that. I want to show you one other thing, Jake. These docks behind me right now, the water is now lapping up over these docks. That can happen at high tide. We're still 3 hours away from high tide right now. So maybe the first signs that we've seen that there is a storm surge coming in. Expecting 3 to 6 feet here in Miami. 6 feet would put it up about to my waist. If it came up 6 feet, it would be about my waist, and that would be into some of the storefronts here along this intercoastal waterway in downtown Miami. The people who were told to evacuate here in these low-lying areas, and also where Kyung La is out there in Miami Beach, officials begging them, do not come home right now. Please stay in the shelters, stay in the safe areas you went to, because it isn't safe to be out right now. Not in these conditions, Jake, and these conditions are going to persist for some time.
Obviously, John, the wind at 100 miles an hour, a huge concern. The storm surge, a bigger concern potentially, given that most victims, most fatalities in hurricanes are because of drowning. What is the biggest concern in Miami right now?
The storm surge consistently has been the area of biggest concern for Miami Beach and also downtown Miami, these low-lying areas right by Biscayne Bay right here. That's why they evacuated. They don't evacuate because of the wind. It's the storm surge they are mostly worried about, and most of the people, or many of the people, did move out of these areas. The winds they're concerned about because of the cranes. There's been a lot of construction in Miami, and there are more than 20 cranes, these giant cranes that they couldn't take down in time, that are still up. They are said to be able to withstand wind gusts of 145 miles an hour. I don't think we'll get that here in Miami. I hope we don't get that. These cranes twist like weather vanes in the wind, which can be disconcerting to see, but they're supposed to move. So right now what people in downtown Miami have seen are these giant cranes moving with the wind. It's supposed to happen, but a little bit of a frightening sight as the winds pick up, Jake.
All right, my friend John Berman, stay safe. Excellent job down there. Let's turn now for the bigger picture with CNN meteorologist Allison Chinchar. She's in the CNN Weather Center. And Allison, where is the storm right now and where is it headed?
Right, so the center of circulation is 20 miles due east of Key West. So we are starting to see that landfall about to take over the Keys, make it back out over open water before it makes a landfall over the peninsula. This storm is still a very powerful Category 4 storm. Here you can see some of those really heavy bands of rainfall for the few folks, and maybe even none, but for the few folks that are still left along the Keys, you are dealing with torrential downpours at this time, not to mention some of your peak winds. Then we start to move on to the surge threat. Now, the surge is already taking place along the east side. You're getting that onshore flow, those winds pushing all of that water onto the east coast. The west coast, it's doing the exact opposite. It's taking the water and pushing it away from the beaches. So some of those beaches, you're actually just seeing miles and miles of sand, but no water where it should be. This is very dangerous. When that water comes back in, and it will do that as the storm pushes off to the north, the winds wrap back around and will push all that water back in. It doesn't come in slowly. It comes in fast and furious, and that will be deadly for anyone that is on those beaches. Then your total storm surge numbers are very impressive still. You'll notice here along the East Coast, some of these numbers have gone down. It's not because the overall numbers are lower. It's because they've already started to accumulate some storm surge. So this is additional storm surge going forward. The highest numbers still remain on the south southwestern tier of Florida because it's a little bit shallower there. The gradient that it goes off before it dips into the ocean is shallower. That allows for those heights to come up a little bit higher than they would on the Atlantic side, where it's a much deeper drop. Here's a look at the track. It's over open water right now, so we expect it to maintain Category 4 strength until it gets to about Tampa. It will weaken slightly down to a Category 3, but after that, as it makes its way up to the Panhandle, this is where it's going to weaken rapidly. This is a good thing for folks in the Panhandle, places like Georgia and Alabama, because of this wind shear, this pink color that you see here. This is going to kill that hurricane very quickly. The top shear at those top layers, it's just going to rip that hurricane apart. Again, good news for the folks up north, not so much for the folks that are dealing with the storm now. We've talked about storm surge, but winds are also going to be a major factor here. Maximum wind gusts expected around 135 miles per hour in Key West, 137 in Fort Myers, about 130 for Tampa. But even, Jake, up around Tallahassee, which is on the northern fringe, they could still be looking at wind gusts of 90 to even 95 miles per hour.
Allison, where is the eye of the storm headed next? And tell us what the worst case scenario is for the next 24 to 36 hours.
Right. So we've actually already seen part of that worst case scenario take place in the last few hours. We've seen the track shift about 14 miles west. That may not seem like a big change, but it is. It means the main path left downtown Tampa and shifted 14 miles west. You would think, Jake, saying, oh, great, it's away from Tampa now. That should be a good thing. It's actually the opposite. It means more storm surge will actually be able to push into the Tampa Bay, and compared to if it would have just stayed directly over Tampa. And unfortunately, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that shift to the west, and that's likely what's going to take place. Now, we talked about the current center of circulation. That eye is 20 miles east of Key West. It's going to push north and likely make landfall somewhere between Naples and Tampa. The exact location will depend on the speed and the movement of the storm over the next several hours.
All right, Allison Chinchar on the CNN Severe Weather Center. Thank you so much for that. Let's go back now to CNN's Kyung La. She's in Miami Beach, where conditions have really even worsened just in the last few minutes. Kyung, what are you experiencing?
It certainly seems that the winds have picked up just a little bit, Jake. We don't have an exact measurement of what the winds are like out here, but the National Weather Service says in Miami there are wind gusts of 100 miles per hour. So I don't have a reader. I can't tell you exactly what it feels, the accurate number is, but I can tell you what I see and what we're feeling. We are getting blown around quite a bit. We are seeing debris on the streets. The concern here is that that debris will take to the air, and anyone who might be out and about could be injured by that flying debris. So that is a big concern. As far as flooding on the streets, we haven't seen too much. There's plenty of water on the streets, but the last time we checked in with the Miami Beach Fire Department, they said as far as major flooding, that's not really something that they've seen as of yet. So that is the good news. The other good news is the storm surge. The concern of a storm surge, that not so much. I mean, we haven't quite seen it at least come off the ocean, come off the beach. Here, we're right on the first major street off the ocean, and we just haven't seen that quite as of yet. And that was a big concern because they were worried that people might get caught in it and might drown, because even though these winds are severe, Jake, the people tend to die most by drowning in that storm surge. As far as anyone who's out and about, we've seen a couple of storm chasers, we've seen some local press, but we haven't seen too many people, and that's good. The Miami Beach Police Department urging people to stay inside, telling them that if they get injured, they are on their own. 911, you're not going to get any help if you're out here. The warning came out yesterday that if you are going to stay in Miami Beach, you're not going to be at some point able to get any help from the police department and the fire department. And let's put all of this into perspective, because we keep talking about where the eye is traveling and how this is going to impact the west side. This is the early part. It's going to be much worse up there, Jake.
All right, Kyung La, stay safe there in Miami Beach. We're going to take a very quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk to the governor of Florida. We're going to talk to Senator Marco Rubio, and we're going to talk to a first responder who is in harm's way east of Key West. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
went out to the middle of the street to try to get a measure of how strong the winds were blowing, and it was saying about 50 then. And as I was walking back, I heard this crash, and it was this sign that had come flying down. To give you a sense, this thing would cut
up. So we were really hoping for them. Also, of course, there is going to be some storm surge concerns, especially when high tide comes tomorrow morning. So we're hoping a lot of these people have evacuated. There are, of course, a lot of shelters in the southern Hillsborough, Riverview community right now. I'm really starting to get pelted by this rain at this point, but we are hoping that this is still in the early portions of what will be a lot worse storm. We're hoping that we're going to have plenty of time to find shelter ourselves as this storm starts to pick up. And I got to say, so we're right now in the Apollo Beach Reserve. It's the nature preserve here. We came here because we really wanted to give you that last look at the water before things get really rough. It always gives you a good sense of how stormy things are. And there's another big gust right there. We've actually been watching people perhaps also doing the same to some degree, coming out to the beach to check things out. Here's a man who just pulled up in a red truck, for instance, perhaps just to get one last look at the water before it is too dangerous to be outside. So another big concern, another reason that we came out here to Apollo Beach is this is an area that was only just recently added as an evacuation zone in parts of southern Hillsborough County. There was some concern by Hillsborough County officials that the people in this community might not know that they were recently added to an evacuation zone A in some location. So thankfully, as we drove into town, we saw tons of businesses boarded up. Nearly nobody outside, so at least people seem to be heeding the warnings that way. And at this point, you know, before we left, we tried to find out, now you see the gusts there, we tried to find out how safe how windy does it need to be before you drive? So obviously, we're talking about wind gusts into the hundreds, over 100 miles per hour at some point, but just over 50, 60 miles per hour. And we heard there about the emergency responders getting off the road. It is unsafe to even just be driving around. This is really getting very, very close to hunker down time. It is for us as well. But again, just giving you that last look at what has been pretty consistent rain with a light wind, I would say, with occasional gusts. That's what we're experiencing right now. And at this point, we are getting pretty well soaked. So, guys, I'm going to send it back to the studio there. Any questions you have for us here in Southern Hillsborough County?
Sure, Adam. I mean, sorry we called you Nicole. Let's get that out of the way. Okay.
It's okay. It's okay.
You've been watching things, and we're getting reports here of some hurricane force winds well to the south of you, but it is starting to creep up our state. You mentioned you got a couple of gusts for viewers that just tuned in. Describe that. When you said you got on the beach there, you started to really feel those.
Yeah. So I was driving down. We took 75 and then 301 just to head south into this area from Tampa. And you know how it is. You're behind the wheel, and you can sometimes tell if you're feeling some strong winds. And honestly, I really wasn't feeling like it was dangerous, but it was right when we got into Apollo Beach. We're coming through the neighborhoods, and that's when you start to feel it on the wheel a little bit. We got out of the car. It's that kind of thing that you open the door and it closes back on you. So it is definitely consistent. And I would say, you can see here, let me even pull this off. You can see we're not too bad, but occasionally it'll start to do this thing. It'll start to really whip at you. In fact, I'm kind of feeling one right now. Again, we're not talking about pushing me over strength winds. We're just talking, boy, the rain's really pelting my face. And thankfully we've got a little bit of cover here, so you can't quite probably appreciate just how windy it is underneath here, thankfully. We're starting to get gusts, but nothing super, super intense.
All right, Adam Weiner for us. Thank you so much. Appreciate aren't going to get any better.
Between 3 and 5 feet behind this house. There are 2 seawalls here, and it has not breached the second one other than the occasional wave, but we expect that to change. We've also heard down the street that there is 2 to 3 feet of water in some other people's houses that are more in low-lying areas.
Are those people that are still there, or are those just homes that...
No, some of them are with us right now, and some of them have found other places.
Are you a resident of Key Haven?
No, I live in Key West proper.
Is this the worst storm you've ever experienced?
It's the worst storm I have been through myself personally, yes. But I grew up on the Isle of Palms in Charleston, South Carolina, so I am familiar with what catastrophic storms can do. Hurricane Hugo came through in '89, and I remember it very well.
Are you personally scared right now? I mean, you're in a building that I understand is as safe and secure as a building can be, but you are still in an incredibly vulnerable place on an incredibly vulnerable time.
Well, no one's dancing in front of windows right now. We all have life jackets and shoes on. We have kits ready to take with us, and if something should happen. So I won't say we are panicking by any means. We have a lot of really level-headed people here, but we are definitely paying attention to what's happening outside and hoping that this eye wall will pass pretty quickly.
Now, you're a first responder. You can't go out to do anything right now. First responders, once the winds get above 40 miles per hour or so, you have to shelter in place as well.
That's correct. There is absolutely no way anybody can be outside right now. You would not be able to stand or walk at all the wind that I'm seeing through the window right now.
All right, Maggie, stay in touch, stay safe. We're all thinking and praying for people in Florida right now. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Senator John McCain in his first TV interview since returning to the Senate after that cancer diagnosis. We're also going to talk to Senator Marco Rubio in Florida and Governor Rick Scott in Florida.
When we first got out here, they are definitely kicking up out here. This might be the last time we're allowed to go live because it almost is getting to be too dangerous out here. But I do want to show you, this is the pool. This is the pool of the hotel that we are staying at. We already have debris that's flying out at us over here. A stick just hit us. You can see the trees are just moving out here. The wind is coming right at us. Honestly, rain is falling much harder than it was earlier this morning when we first got out here. This morning, we didn't see anybody on the beach, but about an hour ago, I actually saw a woman who was taking her dog out. She wanted to take him out to the bathroom before they're trapped inside for the next couple of days out here. Now, if you follow me this way, I want to show you guys the beach. water, so you can see that the beach water, the swell is already starting to get
projectiles. There's stuff flying around. Street signs to fronds like this thing, this size. I mean, this and hitting somebody in the head, that could cause a lot of damage. So we moved a little bit closer to the building just to feel a little bit safer. And the good news here is, in terms of safety, is we've had the largest mass evacuation in the history of Miami-Dade County. Almost 700,000 people were ordered to evacuate, and most of them did. But there are clearly people who are hunkered down, riding out this storm, who may have a case of holdouts remorse, because these conditions